Jiho Kim stood before the massive council chamber, his hands shaking as he looked up at the 12 alien figures seated on their floating thrones. The golden walls of the Valerian Empire's war room stretched high above him, covered in symbols of their countless victories. Each symbol represented a world they had conquered, a species they had destroyed. The scout commander had served the Empire for 20 years since escaping Earth. He had watched them crush civilizations with ease, but today he was terrified. "Speak, human," growled Admiral Vextar, his forearms crossed over his armored chest. His red eyes glowed with impatience. "Your scouts have found another primitive world. Why do you waste our time?" Jiho took a deep breath. "Honored Council, I must warn you about the third planet in the Sol system. The humans call it Earth. It may look like an easy target, but it is the most dangerous trap in the galaxy." Several council members laughed. Their voices echoed through the chamber like thunder. Vextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "A trap? Our sensors show they still burn chemicals to fly into space. They fight with metal bullets and crude explosives. What trap could such primitives possibly set?" "That is exactly what makes them dangerous," Jiho said, his voice growing stronger. "Every human alive is a product of millions of years of war. Not war against other species, but war against their own planet, against each other, against extinction itself. They are survivors." Captain Una Park stepped forward from the back of the chamber. She had also escaped Earth decades ago and served as a navigation officer. Her face was pale as she supported Jiho's words. "The Admiral should listen," Una said. "I have studied human history. In their past, they survived ice ages that would have killed most species. They lived through diseases that destroyed half their population. They fought wars that lasted for generations and came back stronger each time." Vextar leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the two humans. "And yet they never left their small planet until recently. How dangerous can they be?" Jiho's hands clenched into fists. "Because they did not need to leave. Earth made them into the perfect predators. Every human child learns to fight before they can walk properly. Every human adult knows how to kill in 100 different ways. They do not surrender. They do not break. They adapt." The council member known as Chancellor Mordak waved a dismissive tentacle. "Nonsense. Our initial probe shows a peaceful world. They have nations that trade with each other. They have art and music. They even keep small animals as companions. These are not warriors. That makes them more dangerous," Una said urgently. "They hide their true nature behind smiles and kindness. But when threatened, they become something else entirely. I have seen human mothers kill trained soldiers to protect their young. I have watched human children build weapons from broken toys." The room fell silent for a moment. Then Vextar laughed again, louder than before. "You speak of humans as if they were monsters. Our records show they have not had a major war in almost 50 years. They spend their time making entertainment and growing food. They are soft." Jiho shook his head desperately. "They have not had major wars because they learned to prepare for bigger threats. Every human government has secret weapons programs. Every human city has hidden defenses. They have spent those 50 years getting ready for something like us." "Enough," Vextar roared, standing from his throne. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds with 1,000 different defenses. We have faced species with claws like swords and armor like mountain stone. We have defeated hive minds with billions of drones and machine intelligences that could calculate our every move. One small planet of primitive mammals will not stop the Empire." Commander Zekhan spoke up from his position at the tactical display. "The numbers support the Admiral. Our fleet contains 50,000 ships. Each ship carries 200 soldiers. Our weapons can crack planets. Earth has perhaps 5 billion inhabitants and no space fleet worth mentioning." "Numbers do not matter," Jiho said, his voice cracking with emotion. "Humans do not fight with numbers. They fight with hate and love and fear all mixed together. They fight like cornered animals because that is what their planet made them. And cornered animals are the most dangerous creatures in the universe." Una stepped closer to the council. "Please, honored ones, at least send a larger scout force first. Learn more about their defenses. Do not commit the full invasion fleet until—" "Silence!" Vextar's voice shook the chamber. "We are the Valerian Empire. We rule 12 galaxies. We will not cower before a species that has barely discovered faster than light travel. The decision is made. The invasion fleet launches in 3 days." The other council members nodded in agreement. They had heard enough. In their minds, this would be another easy conquest, another symbol to add to their walls. As the council began discussing invasion plans, Jiho and Yuna were dismissed. They walked through the corridors of the massive war station in silence. Finally, Yuna spoke. "They will not listen," she said quietly. Jiho nodded, staring out through a window at the Empire's fleet. Thousands of ships floated in formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. Each ship was larger than anything Earth had ever built. The smallest destroyer could level a human city. "I know," he said. "They see only what they want to see. They think Earth is just another primitive world waiting to be conquered." "What will happen when they arrive?" Yuna asked. Jiho was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. "They will learn why evolution made humans the way they are. They will discover that there is a difference between a civilization that grew up safe and a civilization that grew up fighting for every breath." Through the window, the invasion fleet began to move. 50,000 warships turned toward the small yellow star that held Earth, the largest invasion force in Galactic. History was heading toward what they thought was an easy target neither Jiho nor Yuna could warn. Earth, communications with their homeworld, had been cut off decades ago. All they could do was watch and wait for the terrible lesson that was about to unfold. The Empire was about to learn why some traps are not meant to catch prey, but to test predators. The Valerian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, like a dark cloud covering the stars. 50,000 warships spread across space in perfect formation, their weapons powered and ready. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the small blue planet in the distance. "It looks so peaceful," said Commander Zekhan, studying the sensor readings. "I detect large cities, transportation networks, agricultural areas. No orbital weapons platforms, no defense fleet moving to intercept us." Vextar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. "As expected. Send the standard surrender demand. Tell them they have 1 hour to submit to Imperial rule or face complete destruction." The message was transmitted across all human communication frequencies. The response came faster than expected, broadcast from what appeared to be the planet's Capitol building. A human male with dark hair and tired eyes appeared on the main screen. "I am President Minho Choi of the United Earth Government," the human said calmly. "I have received your demands for surrender. Here is our response. Come and take it." The transmission ended. Vextar stared at the blank screen for several seconds, his forearms twitching with anger. "Did that primitive just refuse the Valerian Empire?" "It appears so, Admiral," Zekhan replied, checking his instruments. "Should we begin orbital bombardment?" "No," Vextar said slowly. "I want them to understand their mistake first. Send the first wave to eliminate their orbital defenses, then land ground forces in their major cities. Let them watch their world fall piece by piece." 1,000 ships moved toward Earth, weapons charging. The planet seemed defenseless, floating in space like a blue jewel waiting to be claimed. Then the first surprise came. What the Valerian sensors had identified as communication satellites suddenly changed. Metal panels slid away to reveal massive kinetic launchers. Hundreds of tungsten rods, each one moving faster than bullets, slammed into the advancing ships. The electromagnetic signatures were so small that the alien sensors had missed them completely. "Evasive action," Vextar roared as his formation scattered. But the humans had planned for this too. Space around Earth erupted with nuclear mines that had been floating dark and cold for decades. Valerian shields flared and failed under the coordinated assault. In the first 10 minutes, the Empire lost 200 ships. On Earth's surface, Dr. Narration watched the battle from the Global Defense Command Center deep beneath the Korean peninsula. Banks of computers around her showed every aspect of the fight. She spoke quietly into her headset. "All orbital platforms are active. Nuclear minefields have engaged. Begin Phase 2. Across the planet, what looked like civilian buildings began to change. Hidden panels opened in skyscrapers to reveal missile launchers. Parks and sports fields slid aside to show underground weapon systems. The entire planet was revealing its true nature. "How?" Zekhan whispered as his sensors picked up thousands of new military targets. "Our scouts saw none of this. Because they hid it," Vextar realized with growing unease. They made their entire world look peaceful while preparing for war. The surviving ships of the first wave finally reached Earth's atmosphere. Valerian commanders expected to face primitive aircraft and simple ground weapons. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Commander Taemin Lee crouched in the ruins of what had been Seoul just hours before. His team of engineers and soldiers watched as Valerian dropships landed in the city center. The aliens expected to find terrified civilians, They found prepared fighters instead. "Remember the plan?" Taman whispered into his radio. "Let them think they are winning. Learn how their technology works, adapt." The Valerian soldiers who emerged from their ships were impressive warriors. Each one stood over 2 meters tall, with natural armor and weapons that could cut through steel. They had conquered 1,000 worlds with these same tactics, but humans had spent 50 years studying every alien contact report, every piece of crashed technology, every hint about potential enemies from space. They knew exactly what they were facing. The first alien patrol moved through the empty streets, their sensors sweeping for human life signs. They found none. The humans had evacuated through underground tunnels that connected every building in the city. What the aliens did not know was that those same tunnels were filled with explosives. Sergeant Jisoo Kang waited in the darkness beneath the street. Above her, alien boots clanked on metal as the patrol passed over a carefully prepared trap. She counted to 10, then pressed the detonator. The explosion sent the entire alien squad tumbling into a pit filled with metal spikes and electrical wires. The few survivors found themselves facing human soldiers who emerged from hidden positions all around them. "Study their equipment," Jisoo ordered her team as they secured the alien weapons and armor. "Command wants to know how everything works." This scene repeated across Earth. In New York, in London, in Cairo, in Mumbai, human forces let alien soldiers land and then systematically captured or destroyed them. Every engagement was designed to gather intelligence while causing maximum enemy casualties. Dr. Minji Han worked frantically in her laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, studying samples of alien blood and tissue that had been collected from the first battles. Her team had been preparing for this moment for decades. Their biology is carbon-based, but with significant differences, she reported to Dr. Song. "I can create targeted viruses that will affect them, but not us. Give me 72 hours. Above ground, the battle continued. Captain Hyunwoo Jang led a special team that had one specific mission: capture intact alien technology. They moved through the wreckage of a crashed Valerian transport, carefully removing computer systems and weapon components. "This power source is incredible," one of his engineers whispered. "If we can reverse engineer this, we could have ships in space within months." Hyunwoo nodded grimly. "That is the plan. They brought the technology to us. Now we make it ours." By the end of the first day, Admiral Vextar had lost 5,000 ships and 50,000 soldiers. His remaining forces controlled nothing more than the landing zones they had carved out with overwhelming firepower. Every attempt to expand their territory met with fierce resistance from humans who seemed to appear from nowhere, strike hard, and disappear again. "Report," Vextar demanded as his staff updated the tactical display. "We hold 17 strategic positions," Zekhan said reluctantly, "but human attacks have damaged or destroyed most of our equipment at those sites. Our soldiers report that the humans use tactics unlike any we have encountered. They do not fight to hold ground. They fight to kill our troops and steal our technology." Vextar studied the map of Earth. Red dots showed Valerian positions, but they were all surrounded by thousands of yellow dots representing human forces. It looked like islands in an ocean of enemies. "Send reinforcements," he ordered. "Another 10,000 ships. We will crush them with superior numbers." But even as he gave the order, Vextar felt a cold fear growing in his chest. The humans were not fighting like any conquered species he had ever seen. They were fighting like predators who had been waiting for prey to come to them. The trap was not in Earth's defenses. The trap was Earth itself. 3 months had passed since the Valerian Empire began what they thought would be a quick conquest of Earth. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display with growing horror. The red dots representing his forces were disappearing one by one, while blue dots showing human activity spread across the planet like a disease. "Give me the numbers," he said quietly to Commander Zekhan. Zekhan's voice was hollow. "We have lost 28,000 ships and 3 million soldiers. Human resistance has not decreased. If anything, they are becoming more effective with each engagement." Vextar's 4 hands clenched into fists. How was this possible? The Empire had crushed civilizations far more advanced than Earth. They had weapons that could destroy moons and armies that had never known defeat. Yet somehow, these primitive humans were winning. On Earth's surface, Captain Hyunwoo Jang stood in what had once been a factory in South Korea. Now it was something else entirely. Human engineers worked alongside captured Valerian machines, rebuilding alien technology with improvements that even the original designers had never imagined. "Show me the latest prototype," Hyun-woo said to his chief engineer, Dr. Won-ho Kim. Dr. Kim led him to a massive shape covered by a metal sheet. When he pulled it away, Hyun-woo smiled for the first time in months. It was a Valerian attack ship, but better. The hull was reinforced with earth steel alloys. The weapons had been modified to use human targeting systems. The engines had been rebuilt to be faster and more efficient than the original design. "We have improved their technology by 30%, Dr. Kim said proudly, "and we understand how to build more. Within 6 months, Earth will have its own space fleet." Across the planet, similar scenes were taking place. Humans had done more than just defend their world. They had turned it into a massive research laboratory, studying every piece of alien equipment they could capture. Dr. Min Ji-han had succeeded beyond her wildest hopes. Her biological weapons were spreading through Valerian forces like wildfire. The aliens' own superior healing abilities were working against them, allowing the modified viruses to spread faster through their systems. "The latest report shows enemy effectiveness down by 60%, she told Dr. Nari Song during their daily briefing. "Their soldiers are too sick to fight properly, and their commanders are making desperate mistakes." But the humans were not content to simply defend. They had begun to hunt. Sergeant Jisoo Kang crept through the forest outside what had been Berlin. Her team moved like ghosts, using skills that their ancestors had developed hunting mammoths and saber-toothed cats, except now they were hunting aliens with plasma rifles and energy shields. The Valerian patrol ahead of them was trying to reach a supply depot 10 kilometers away. They would never make it. Jisoo's team had been tracking them for 3 days, learning their patterns, studying their weaknesses. Now, she whispered into her radio, the attack came from all sides. Humans appeared from underground tunnels, from behind trees, from positions that should have been impossible to reach without being detected. The aliens' advanced sensors meant nothing when the humans used their own technology against them. Within minutes, it was over. Another Valerian squad had vanished, their equipment stripped and their bodies left as a warning to others. The message was clear: Earth belonged to humanity, and trespassers would be eliminated. The psychological effect on Valerian forces was devastating. These were soldiers who had conquered galaxies, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Humans did not fight fair. They used traps, ambushes, and psychological warfare that broke alien minds not evolved for such calculated cruelty. Colonel Dongwoo Park stood in the command center of what had been New York. The city was in ruins, but it was human ruins. Every destroyed building had been turned into a fortress. Every block street had become a kill zone. The Valerian forces that had once occupied the city center had been slowly pushed into smaller and smaller areas until they finally broke and retreated. "Sir," reported one of his communications officers, "we are receiving surrender requests from 3 more Valerian units. They want to lay down their weapons and be taken prisoner." Dongwoo nodded grimly. "Accept their surrender, but keep them under heavy guard. Some of them might be useful for intelligence gathering." It was a remarkable change. 3 months ago, the Valerian Empire had expected humanity to surrender. Now their own soldiers were giving up rather than face human hunters in the ruins of Earth cities. Admiral Vextar received the reports with disbelief. His soldiers, the finest warriors in the galaxy, were afraid. They spoke of humans who appeared from nowhere and vanished like smoke. They told stories of entire patrols disappearing without a trace, leaving only pools of alien blood and empty armor. "Request immediate reinforcements," he ordered. "Another 100,000 ships. We will overwhelm them with pure numbers." But Commander Zekhan had disturbing news. "Admiral, our intelligence reports indicate that humans now have functional spacecraft. They have been seen testing faster than light drives based on our own technology." Vextar felt his blood turn cold. "That is impossible. It took the Empire centuries to develop FTL travel. They have had our technology for only 3 months. Nevertheless, it appears to be true. Our scouts report human ships operating in the outer system. They are hunting our supply convoys." As if summoned by their conversation, alarms began blaring throughout the flagship. An officer rushed to Vextar's side, his face pale with fear. "Admiral, human ships have appeared throughout the fleet. They are attacking our supply vessels." On the main screen, Vextar watched in horror as sleek ships with Earth markings tore through his carefully arranged formation. They moved like sharks through water, striking fast and hard before disappearing again. But these were not the clumsy chemical rockets his scouts had reported. These were advanced spacecraft that seemed to outmaneuver his own vessels. Admiral Soo-young Kim commanded the lead human ship from her position on the bridge. Around her, officers who had been civilians just months before worked with the efficiency of veterans. Earth's entire population had become a military force, and they learned faster than any species Vextar had ever encountered. Target their supply ships first, Soo-young ordered. Cut off their fuel and ammunition. Force them to make desperate choices. The human ships were smaller than Valerian vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable. More importantly, they were commanded by beings who had grown up fighting against impossible odds. Every human captain knew that retreat was not an option. They had nowhere to run except into the cold darkness of space. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Valerian fleet had lost another 1,000 ships and most of their supply convoy. The humans vanished back into the asteroid belt, leaving behind only wreckage and the knowledge that Earth now owned the space around their planet. Vextar stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. For the first time in his long military career, he was losing a war. Not just losing, but being systematically destroyed by an enemy that should have been helpless. "Sir," Zekhan said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We could return with a larger force, better prepared for their tactics." Vextar's mandibles clicked angrily. "The Valerian Empire does not retreat. We have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. We will not be defeated by one small planet." But even as he spoke the words, Vextar knew something had changed. The humans were no longer defending. They were attacking. And with each passing day, they were getting stronger while his forces grew weaker. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembered the warnings from the human scout, Jiho Kim. Something about humans being survivors, about adaptation and persistence. At the time, those warnings had seemed like the paranoid fears of a broken refugee. Now they sounded like prophecy. 6 months after the invasion began, Admiral Vexatar's flagship drifted in space near Jupiter, engines damaged and shields failing. Around him, the scattered remains of the once mighty Valerian fleet tried to regroup, while human ships hunted them like wolves chasing wounded deer. The transformation had been impossible to believe, yet here it was happening before his eyes. Earth had not only survived the largest invasion in galactic history, but had somehow achieved complete control of their solar system. Human ships now patrolled from Mercury to Pluto, and they were growing bolder with each passing day. Admiral Soo-young Kim stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Indomitable, watching her tactical display with satisfaction. The ship had been built from the wreckage of a Valerian dreadnought, but human engineers had improved every system. It was faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything the Empire had ever produced. "Report from the outer patrols," called her communications officer, Lieutenant Jae-hyun Oh. "Captain Yoonji Lim's squadron has successfully captured another supply convoy near Neptune. No human casualties," Soo-young nodded. Captain Lim was one of their best, a former civilian pilot who had learned to command warships with terrifying efficiency. Like all humans, she had adapted to warfare as if she had been born for it. "Any word from our deep space scouts?" Soo-young asked. "Yes, Admiral. Commander Seokjin Bae reports that Valerian forces are retreating from 3 star systems. They appear to be consolidating around their fortress worlds." This was better news than Soo-young had dared hope for. Human ships were now operating dozens of light years from Earth, striking at Valerian supply lines and isolated outposts. Each victory brought more alien technology to study and more intelligence about the Empire's structure. But the real weapon was not technology. It was fear. On the bridge of his damaged flagship, Admiral Vextar listened to reports from across his command with growing despair. It was not just military defeats that worried him. Something else was happening throughout the Empire. Something that threatened the very foundation of Valerian rule. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we are receiving communications from 17 different conquered species. They are asking about the humans." Vextar's mandibles clicked with frustration. "What about them?" "They want to know how a single planet defeated our invasion fleet. Some of them are suggesting that if humans can resist the Empire, perhaps they can too." This was the nightmare scenario that kept Vextar awake during his rest periods. For 1,000 years, the Empire had maintained control through the belief that resistance was hopeless. Every species that had tried to fight back had been crushed completely, their worlds left as burned examples to others who might think of rebellion. But now there was proof that the Empire could be defeated. Humans had not just survived, they had thrived. Worse, they were actively helping other species learn to fight back. President Minho Choi's voice echoed across Imperial space as human communication systems broadcast his message to every conquered world. The transmission was carried by human ships that appeared at the edge of star systems, sent their message, and vanished before Imperial forces could respond. "People of the galaxy," Choi said, his image appearing on screens throughout hundreds of worlds. "We are the humans of Earth. 6 months ago, the Valerian Empire invaded our world expecting easy conquest. They brought 50,000 ships and millions of soldiers to destroy us." The camera pulled back to show the president standing in the rebuilt city of Seoul. Behind him, human workers and captured alien technology worked together to repair the damage from the invasion. "We are still here," Choi continued. "The Empire is not. Their fleets run from our ships. Their soldiers surrender rather than face our forces. We have proven that the Empire can be defeated, that freedom is possible for all thinking beings." The message spread like wildfire through Imperial space. On Zephyria Prime, a species of bird-like beings began sabotaging Imperial mining equipment. On Thorak, massive insectoids started coordinating attacks on garrison forces. Throughout the Empire, the spark of rebellion was catching fire. Colonel Dongwoo Park led the first human expedition to an alien world, landing on Kepler 442b with a force of 500 Marines. The planet was an Imperial fortress world, supposedly impregnable. But humans had learned that there was no such thing as an impossible target. "Remember," Dongwoo told his troops as their ships approached the planet's surface, "we are not here to conquer. We are here to liberate. The native species on this world have been enslaved for 300 years. Our job is to free them and teach them to fight." The landing was a masterpiece of human tactical planning. Instead of attacking the heavily fortified Imperial bases directly, human forces landed in the wilderness and made contact with underground resistance movements. They brought weapons, technology, and most importantly, hope. Captain Yoonji Lim led a specialized team that infiltrated the main Imperial command center. But rather than destroying it, they captured it intact along with all the intelligence data it contained. Within hours, human computers were processing information about Imperial fleet movements, supply routes, and defensive strategies across dozens of star systems. "This is incredible," reported Dr. Hana Yu, Earth's chief intelligence analyst, as she studied the captured data. "We now know the location of every major Imperial base within 50 light years. More importantly, we know which worlds have active resistance movements." The psychological warfare was just as important as the military campaign. Human ships would appear at Imperial outposts, broadcast messages of hope to enslaved populations, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The message was always the same. The Empire could be defeated, freedom was possible, and humans would help any species willing to fight for their independence. On the Imperial capital world of Valeria Prime, Emperor Zelhan paced through his throne room like a caged animal. Reports flooded in from across the Empire describing rebellion, sabotage, and outright revolution. Worlds that had been peacefully subjugated for centuries were suddenly in open revolt. "How many ships have we lost this week?" the Emperor demanded. His military advisor, General Kextar, consulted his datapad with trembling hands. 800 ships, Your Majesty. But that is not the worst news. We have lost contact with 17 star systems entirely. We believe they have declared independence and are actively fighting our garrison forces." The Emperor's rage shook the crystalline walls of the throne room. "This is impossible. No single species has ever caused this much damage to the Empire. What makes these humans so dangerous?" General Kextar had been studying human tactics for months, trying to understand their success. "They do not fight like any species we have encountered, Your Majesty. Most civilizations develop either as predators or prey. Predator species become warriors but lack adaptability. Prey species become clever but lack aggression. Humans somehow developed as both." Explain. "They are persistence hunters like certain animals on their world. They do not kill quickly. They chase their prey until it collapses from exhaustion. But they are also tool users who adapt constantly to new challenges. They turn every defeat into a learning experience and every victory into a stepping stone to greater success. The Emperor stared out the window at his capital city, where millions of beings from hundreds of species served the Empire in apparent contentment. But he could see the fear in their eyes now, the growing hope that perhaps their slavery was not eternal after all. "What do you recommend?" he asked quietly. General Kextar was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Negotiation, Your Majesty. Before they destroy us completely." For the first time in 1,000 years, the Valerian Empire was considering surrender, and it was all because one small blue planet had refused to give up. The hunters had become the hunted, and the Empire was learning what it felt like to be prey. 2 years after the first Valerian ship had appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, Admiral Yoongi Shin commanded a fleet of 3,000 human vessels as they approached the imperial capital of Valeria Prime. Behind him, ships from dozens of liberated species formed the largest rebel armada in galactic history. The irony was not lost on him. The Empire had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, and had instead created the very force that would destroy them. Every captured ship, every piece of stolen technology, every tactical lesson learned in desperate combat had been turned against its creator's signal from the Imperial Palace, reported Communications Officer Taehyung. Min Emperor Zelhan requests negotiations. Admiral Shin studied the massive world ahead of them. Valeria Prime was a fortress planet, protected by energy shields that could deflect entire fleets and defended by the last remnants of the Imperial Navy. 2 years ago, such defenses would have been impossible for humans to overcome. But that was before humans had learned to think like galactic predators. "Put him through," Shin ordered. Emperor Zelhan appeared on the main screen, his regal bearing unable to hide the exhaustion in his ancient eyes. Behind him, the throne room that had once symbolized absolute power now looked empty and cold. "Admiral Shin," the Emperor said, his voice carrying across space with desperate dignity, "I propose that we discuss terms for ending this conflict. Surely we can reach an agreement that serves both our peoples?" Shin's expression remained neutral. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. These were men and women who had been teachers, factory workers, and farmers just 2 years ago. Now they commanded technology that surpassed anything the Empire had ever built. "Your Majesty," Shin replied, 2 years ago you sent 50,000 ships to destroy my world. You offered no negotiations then. You demanded unconditional surrender. Those same terms now apply to you. The Emperor's face hardened. You cannot seriously expect the Valerian Empire to simply surrender. We have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. We have maintained order across millions of worlds. You have maintained slavery, corrected Admiral Nari Lee, whose ship flanked Shin's flagship. We have spoken with your subjects, now they tell very different stories about imperial rule. It was true. As human forces had liberated world after world, they had uncovered the reality behind the Empire's propaganda. Species forced to mine dangerous materials for imperial industry. Entire civilizations reduced to agricultural slaves feeding the Empire's war machine. Children taken from their families to serve as soldiers in imperial armies. The galaxy that humans had discovered was not the orderly civilization the Empire claimed to be. It was a vast prison, with the Valerian species as the wardens and everyone else as inmates. Captain Yoonji Lim's voice crackled over the communication channel from her position commanding the assault fleet. Admiral, we have reports from our scouts. Imperial defensive systems are powering up. They appear to be preparing for battle rather than surrender. Shin nodded grimly. He had not expected the Empire to give up easily. For 1,000 years they had known only victory. The concept of defeat was foreign to them. Very well, Shin said to the Emperor's image. If you choose to fight, we will accommodate you. But understand this. We are not the same species that you attacked 2 years ago. We have learned from every battle, adapted to every challenge, and grown stronger with each victory. Your empire ends today one way or another. The transmission cut off. Around Valeria Prime, the last great battle of the Galactic War began. But it was not the epic struggle that the Empire expected. Human tactics had evolved far beyond simple ship-to-ship combat. While the Imperial Navy prepared to face the rebel fleet in traditional battle formation, human engineers activated devices that had been secretly placed throughout the system over the past 6 months. The Empire's great defensive shields flickered and died as their power generators overloaded. Communication networks went silent as hidden viruses, developed by Dr. Minji Han's team, spread through Imperial computer systems. Supply depots exploded as sabotage devices placed by human infiltrators activated simultaneously. Colonel Dongwu Park led the ground assault with surgical precision. Instead of attacking the heavily defended Imperial Palace directly, human forces landed at strategic points throughout the capital city. They moved through underground tunnels that connected to every major building, appearing behind Imperial defenses like ghosts. The battle for Valeria Prime lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Valerian Empire had ceased to exist. Emperor Zelhan sat alone in his throne room as human soldiers secured the palace. His guards had surrendered without firing a shot, and his government had collapsed as quickly as their defensive systems. Outside his windows, he could see beings from dozens of species celebrating in the streets of his capital. Admiral Shin entered the throne room with a small escort, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. He looked around at the symbols of imperial power with something like pity in his eyes. "It is over," Shin said simply. The Emperor nodded slowly. "How?" he asked. "How did one primitive planet destroy an empire that ruled the galaxy?" Shin considered the question carefully. Behind him, Captain Soo-Young Kim and Admiral Nari Lee waited respectfully. They understood that this moment was about more than military victory. "You made several mistakes," Shin said finally. "First, you assumed that primitive meant weak. But humans are primitive precisely because we never needed to evolve beyond warfare. Every day of our existence has been a fight for survival against our own planet, our environment, and each other." The Emperor listened in silence. "Second, you thought conquest was about superior technology. But technology is just tools. What matters is the mind that uses those tools. Human minds are shaped by millions of years of problem-solving under pressure. We do not just use technology, we improve it." Shin stepped closer to the throne. "But your greatest mistake was believing that power comes from fear. True power comes from hope. You ruled through terror and oppression. We liberated through example and support. Which do you think inspired more loyalty?" Outside the palace, the celebrations continued. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were free to determine their own futures. Worlds that had been stripped of resources could rebuild. Children who had been born into slavery could grow up as free beings. Jiho Kim stood in the plaza outside the Imperial Palace, watching the crowds with mixed emotions. Beside him, Captain Yuna Park observed the historic moment with similar feelings. "We tried to warn them," Yuna said quietly. Jiho nodded. They would not listen. They saw only what they expected to see, a weak species ripe for conquest. "What happens now?" Yuna asked. Through the palace windows, they could see Admiral Shin and the human leadership meeting with representatives from dozens of liberated species. The conversation was about building something new, something better than the empire that had fallen. "Now we prove that humans are more than just warriors," Jiho said. "We show the galaxy that the same qualities that made us dangerous enemies can make us valuable allies." The Terran Coalition was established 3 months later, not as a human empire but as a voluntary association of free worlds. Humans took no tribute, demanded no submission, and claimed no special authority. They simply offered protection to those who wanted it, and knowledge to those who sought it. The galaxy learned new rules. Never underestimate a species based on their apparent technology level. Never assume that primitive means weak, and never ever attack a world whose people have spent millions of years learning how to survive against impossible odds. Earth had indeed been a trap, but not the kind the Empire had expected. It was not a trap that caught invaders and destroyed them. It was a trap that taught them what they had created, a species so perfectly adapted to warfare that they could turn any defeat into ultimate victory. The Valerian Empire had stepped in blind, expecting to find prey. Instead, they had awakened predators who would reshape the galaxy forever. In the end, the greatest trap of all was underestimation itself.